On today's episode, we get to travel the Metro for our first of many Metropolitan previews for the 24-25 season, and we get to start off with the New York Islanders. Super excited to have Gil Martin join me today as we get to talk about Islanders and Hurricanes on a Wednesday crossover edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week or 3 days a week. We're in the offseason talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. Also do a weekly column on the Chicago Wolves called Wolves Weekly, which I'll be kicking off here in a couple weeks. I'm the co-host of the Search Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. As I said at the start of the show, I'm very excited to have Gil Martin, part of the Locked On Islanders podcast, get to do a little Islanders offseason, kind of get his thoughts on everything that the team went through and, what could we expect for the Islanders this upcoming 24-25 season. And we're also going to predict how the Islanders and the Hurricanes are going to do in the Metro Division this season. But before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. Gil, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing on this night?
I am doing well, and thanks for having me. Always fun to do a crossover episode, especially with the training camps opening up so soon. So it's the right time to start thinking about the season ahead.
Yes, definitely, for sure. We are luckily less than a week away, because luckily it's Wednesday, and it's right around the corner. You got to get through this weekend, and then now we actually get to talk about actual hockey stuff rather than just speculations. So thankfully we're almost there. You can almost smell it of an actual season and stuff like that. So Gil, I have to ask you, I know the Islanders they've been somewhat active, but it's also been kind of quiet also in a sense. I know, especially for free agency. So let's start off with the draft. How do you feel like your Islanders did, going through that whole little draft process out there at the Sphere in Vegas, which I think was actually pretty cool, very different experience. But how do you think your team did at the draft?
I was pleased. For the first time in 5 years, Lou Lamoriello actually held his first round pick. Did not trade it. Cole Yzerman, who is considered one of the best pure goal scorers in the draft, if not the best, fell to the Islanders at 20. And, the Islanders really do lack a lot of offensive weapons in their prospect pool, so getting a goal scorer like that is great. He's probably 3, maybe even 4 years away from being NHL ready. So, is it going to make a difference this year? No, he's going to be in college. But you have a guy with the potential to be a legitimate top 6 forward who can help you on the power play, who can put the puck in the net. And we know that those are not easy players to find.
No, especially not. And honestly, getting him at 20 is still not bad of a pick, especially if you have to wait a little bit, because we all know not every first rounder is an automatic, this guy's going to be in the league right away. You're talking maybe top 5, and sometimes that's not even the thing either. So even getting him at 20 is still pretty good, even if you have to wait a little bit. But that's what, thankfully, development is, and having to worry about all of that. I mean, at least your team had a draft pick in the first round. I stayed and watched the entire draft, wait for the Hurricanes to go at 27 for them to trade it away, and that was about it. So at least you had a first round pick.
Yeah, and it was surprising and pleasantly so, because like I said, we hadn't had one in 4 previous seasons.
Right.
So it was good to have that. Had 2 second-round picks. Took a Jesse Pulkkinen, a 6'6" defenseman, and then Kamil Bednarik, a center who also is going to spend the year in college after playing for the U.S. national team.
Yeah, I really liked him. I thought he was going to be, if the Hurricanes kept their pick, I was wondering if they're going to try to get him. So who would you say are you most, I know, like you said, we're looking probably years down the road, but who are you kind of most excited about out of the draft class that you hope to maybe one day be an Islander and get to see some AHL action out of?
I'd have to say Yzerman. I mean, when you're picking 20th and
Mm-hmm.
one of the best, if not the best, goal scorers in the draft falls to you, that's cause for excitement. Now, he's got some limitations elsewhere in his game, has to
Right.
work on, what he does when he doesn't have the puck. Maybe has to work on being a little less selfish, although the Islanders tend to have more pass first players. So one or two guys who shoot a lot wouldn't be a bad thing.
Right.
But, I think Yzerman is the one that's going to make or break this draft.
No, definitely for sure. It's definitely someone to keep an eye on for because when you look at, like you said, the national development team, you get a couple of guys from there, so you're getting a lot of players who did get some good development out of a program that's been getting better and better as the years have gone on, especially in the USHL and all that type of stuff. So now transitioning to a very quick, like we didn't really have a long period between the draft and free agency. It was like, all right, here's the draft, and then boom, free agency is like 2 days later with like a day in between. And not a lot of coming into the Islanders. I know you guys lost a bunch of guys too, and I know Cal Clutterbuck is still a UFA as of right now. But you do get Anthony Duclair, so you do at least for the first time in a while get someone on the first day of free agency. So, what's the overall, like? How does everyone feel about Anthony Duclair being a New York Islander, especially with Lula Moreau actually doing something on day one of free agency?
We were happy with Duclair. I think he adds speed, which this team desperately needs. He is a legitimate top six forward. I think he's more of a second line guy on a quality team. The Islanders will probably slot him into the first line. But if you think about it, last year, the Islanders had, guys like Casey Cizikas and Hudson Fashing and players who they're not bad players, but they're not legitimate top six forwards. And these guys were playing in your top six. So, that creates a real problem. Pierre Engvall, useful player, not a top six guy. Simon Holmstrom, Anders Lee at this stage in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think adding a legitimate top six guy who has the speed to keep up with a Matthew Barzal and be hopefully effective with him is definitely an upgrade. Not to say that the Islanders don't need more upgrades, but
Right.
getting Duclair, I think, was a solid move. They didn't break the bank for him at $3.5 million a year for 4 years, so that is welcome. And then they also signed before the draft a Russian free agent from the KHL, Maxim Tsiplakov. He was fourth in the KHL last year with 31 goals. How that translates to the NHL, well, we're going to find out. But
Right.
Lou Lamoriello, who usually says very little, he said we didn't sign him to send him to the AHL, so they're going to give him every opportunity to integrate himself into the NHL lineup, probably second or third line, depending on how quickly he adjusts.
Oh, no, for sure. And like you said, even 31 in the KHL is still nothing to sniff at, especially when you're talking the second best league in the entire world. I mean, a lot of people would love to say, the SHL and like Liga might have something to say about that. But I mean, let's be honest, the KHL is what the KHL is. So not bad overall. Yeah, so it's definitely interesting to keep an eye on him. And I know someone of the Hurricanes fans would definitely know about Kyle McLean. Actually, he was a former junior King. He also did get an extension with you guys as well, so he's also staying on the island. I know on, not in. I made sure to get it right because I don't want to get mentions getting that wrong. But what are your thoughts on him? Because he did kind of put it. He made himself felt present in the first round in the playoffs. So what are your thoughts on Kyle McLean coming back to the Islanders for a little bit longer?
I'm happy with McLean. He is a useful fourth line guy. He'll hustle. He has a little bit of speed to his game. Occasionally, he'll make the pretty offensive play. I remember the playoff goal he scored was a nice play.
It was.
He may be able to help on the penalty kill now that Cal Clutterbuck is not likely to return.
Right.
But we'll see how he fits in. He hustles. He plays the game the right way. He has some upside. I mean, he's 25. It's not like he's, 21 or 22, and we don't know how high his ceiling is going to be. But I think he's going to be a useful bottom six player, and I like the way he plays the game.
No, most definitely. I think he's someone that I think very underrated for what he's done, and I'm excited to watch see what he does too. And one quick thing before we go into our first intermission is that I know the AHL Network did their top 20 defense, but I know a lot of people had some thoughts on that because that tweet got deleted pretty quick. But Noah Dobson did make it into the top 20. I think he was like 15, I believe, 15. Because he was like 2 spots behind Jacob Slavin and right behind Zach Werenski, which isn't a bad company to be in. So, like, do you think that Noah Dobson, do you think he should have been a little bit higher, or do you think they kind of somewhat got it right for him? Because I think he's a very underrated guy who should be a little bit higher. Like, I think those 3 should have moved up somewhat in the list myself. But, what are your thoughts on Dobson coming in at 15, being right around that Zach Werenski, Jacob Slavin range of that top 20?
Yeah, look, I can nitpick. I mean, if I was doing it, I might have put him 13th or 14th, but I think they basically got it right. And the thing about Dobson, why he wasn't ranked higher, number one, this was his breakout season, his first 70-point season, and a lot of it is based on reputation. So do it one more year, and you'll see him move up the list. And the other thing is what he does when he doesn't have the puck. And what he does in his own zone. A few too many turnovers, trying to transition from defense to offense, not as physical. He's not a small guy. You know, he has some size, but he doesn't always play physically. He does block a lot of shots, which was kind of surprising. But I think they got it mostly right. But I do think with Dobson, there's still some upside there that he could climb those rankings with another good season or two.
I agree. I agree definitely mostly. Yeah, I think that, like I said, he's very underrated. I think those 3 guys together give him another year. I mean, we all know how good Jacob Slavin is. We all know how good Zach Werenski is. If he gets rid of, minus the injuries, he's really, really good. So I think those 3 guys should give it another year. We'll see them move up the list for sure. So stick around, guys. We are going to do our 24-25 expectations of the New York Islanders, but also the Carolina Hurricanes as well. So stick around as we'll get into that here in a second on a Wednesday edition crossover of the Locked On Hurricanes. All right, guys, we've talked about Game Time, and Game Time this year has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And for me, I really like the fact that the Game Time Picks does that, and we're not talking just for sports. We're also talking for concerts, comedy theater, and so much more. And there's this thing called their all-in pricing. And if you do this, you have to make sure you click that little feature. So that way, when you do that, you get the all-in pricing feature, which toggles the feature of showing you the total upfront. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. So you know what you're going to be paying for when you're going through the searching for the tickets itself. Now, the thing that I really like about Game Time app is their seat viewfinder, and that's the panoramic view that you get from your seat in the app before you buy. So there's no surprise, awkward angles, obstructive views, none of that. It actually takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for you when you go with Game Time. So make sure to download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONAHL. That's LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. And thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes and, of course, Locked On Islanders your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we talked about the end of segment 1. We are going to do our season expectations for the Islanders and the Hurricanes. And of course, we're going to start off with the Islanders first because of Mr. Gil being our guest here for this part of the crossover. So Gil, first year of hopefully a whole year of Patrick Waugh being the head coach. I know he came into you guys partway through the season, kind of jump-started the team, got them going, and eventually made the playoffs. Now this is just hopefully, like I said, a full year of Patrick Waugh behind the bench. What are you hoping for? What are the expectations for the Islanders with Waugh kind of being the guy at the helm for the season.
There are some reasons for more optimism. Even though the roster is more or less the same, we talked about, Tsiplakov and Duclair adding a little offense, a little speed. Love Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck, but they are older and they were slowing down a bit. So, adding a little speed definitely helps this lineup. They needed it. But for the most part, the improvement is going to have to come from within. You have Patrick Waugh behind the bench the entire season. Hopefully that is helpful, that, the players will understand what's expected of them and be able to implement it from game one as opposed to in the middle of the season. You have Ilya Sorokin, who had a bad year by his standards last year, by far the worst statistics of his NHL career. If he can bounce back, that would be a big help. And then I think staying healthy on the blue line. Last year, Scott Mayfield got injured in game one, broke his ankle, played 40 games on a broken ankle, wasn't very effective. It really showed. Then he missed the rest of the season. You had Adam Pelech and Ryan Pollock both missing about 25 games each. If the defensive core can stay healthy and Sorokin can bounce back, and I think they're kind of related, that's where you see improvement. Also, the penalty kill was dead last in the NHL last year. You have a new assistant coach running the PK and Tommy Albaline, the former Flame and Devil. If he can even get the penalty kill to middle of the pack, these are areas where this team can improve. On the downside, the team is a year older and they already have a pretty old roster, even without Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck. So, can Anders Lee bounce back? Can Kyle Palmieri have another 30-goal season at the age of 33 or 34? J.G. Pajot. These are all guys who are on the wrong side of 30 and whose production has been going down a little bit in recent years. They can't afford to lose more production from these guys. Otherwise, you're kind of looking at the same kind of a situation. I think we're still talking about an Islanders team that is somewhere between 6th and 10th in the Eastern Conference, where they'll either be 3rd in the Metro or one of the 2 wildcard teams, or just barely miss the playoffs, depending on how teams like Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, Washington, and Pittsburgh do.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely made things interesting for sure, especially when you look at how stacked the Atlantic is. I think, we all thought last year it was going to be, it's going to be 5 teams out of the Atlantic and the 3 Metro teams, and then all of a sudden, you got Washington sneaking in there and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely making it interesting of the fact that if, could we see a situation where it is just you get the top 3 and you're in. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Metro plays out, especially the Atlantic too, like you said, because it seems like a lot of guys in that Atlantic division just got a lot better in a lot of areas.
And so did the Devils, who I didn't mention. I mean, they got their goalie. They added some important pieces as well. You got to figure they're going to be in contention for a playoff spot. It's going to be a very tight race in the Eastern Conference for those playoff spots.
No, definitely for sure. And of course, talking with you on Locked On, AHL and stuff like that with the Hurricanes. I mean, the expectations this year is make the playoffs again because, they took a half step back. We all know that. I mean, it's kind of tough when you lose Brady Shea, Brett Pesce. You basically lost your entire second D pair. Timo Teravainen, top 6 guy. You lose Steph Nason, who was he was bottom 6, but he was your power play specialist in terms of being in the, right in front of the net, getting the greasy goals and stuff like that, and being, a physical presence. You are basically running the same goalies back, but instead of Kochekov starting in the AHL, it's going to be him and Anderson. Then it turns into, is it a 1A, 1B? Is Anderson the main starter? Is it Kochekov? So who really knows? But then you look at the additions of, Sean Walker, Shane Gostisbehere coming back for a second run. You get William Carrier on one of the most interesting deals I think we've seen in a while for 6 years at $2 million. Jack Roslovic comes in, and I know Seth Jarvis, when he did his interview, the fact that he says that Jack looks really fast. He even said that he thinks that Roslovic is a very underrated guy, and he's zipping around. Eric Robinson, kind of impressed Seth Jarvis as well. And talk about Seth Jarvis, I mean, he just signed that 8-year contract at 7.5, technically 7.9, but deferred money comes into play where it's part of the CBA, just no one's used it very much.
Right.
So it kind of works out. I still think there are some question marks of who do you place into the top 6 on the left wing side that used to be Timo Teravainen's spot? Do you slide Jordan Martin up at that point? Do you put Jack Roslovic there? Do you go in, hopefully see if Bradley Nadeau, Jackson Blake, Felix Storm takes that spot? I mentioned on Saturday's show, hey, let's just go offer sheet Nick Robertson, because why not? Let's add a little bit of extra chaos, because he wants out of Toronto. Toronto doesn't want to pay him a lot of money, and the Hurricanes, with some LTIR help, with unfortunately Jesper Foss being out for the whole season due to neck surgery, they could get some LTIR flexibility and just go offer sheet the guy if they really wanted to. So I still think the defense, it does take a little while for people to come in and learn the Hurricanes defensive system. But, I mean, Tim Gleason's been there for a while as the assistant coach running the defense. He's really good. Rod Brind'Amour signed a 5-year extension. His whole staff got 1 or 2 years. And, luckily for Shane Gostisbehere, he's been part of the system. Now he's going to have to unlearn what he did in Detroit for a year, but luckily, he's a little bit ahead of the curve. It might take Sean Walker a little bit, but you got him locked up for 5 years at a really good 3.6. And then even after this season, you still got Walker, Gostisbehere, Chatfield, and Slavin all locked up for at least 2 more seasons, because I know a couple of those guys got 3-year deals. Slavin's new 8-year deal kicks in next year. So I think the defense for the most part is going to be good. Goaltending, as long as Anderson stays healthy and Kochetkov kind of continues the run that he's been on recently, I think the big question mark right now is how's the offense going to be? That's kind of the main thing, where I still think the Hurricanes are going to make the playoffs. Are we talking 3 points off the President's Trophy? It remains to be seen. Of course, we all thought some other teams were going to play a lot better last year that did, and there was teams last year, Philadelphia Flyers, who kind of just played above their heads and kind of just made things interesting. So I still think they're going to make the playoffs. It's just where exactly in the Metro. I think the worst you're talking is a wild card spot, but I think it's like wild card 1 more than 8. I don't think they're going to be like in a dogfight for the second spot for the wild card. But
right. But like, for example, the last couple of years at least, you knew it was like Carolina and the Rangers were up here and the rest of the division was in the next category, depending on which year. Do you still think the Hurricanes are, first or second place material this year, or do you think they're more likely to be in that third place or wild card hunt?
I'm gonna go optimistically, and I still say that they are that second team in the Metro. But I will throw this butt in because I'm trying to also stay unbiased. The New Jersey Devils, like you said, Gil, they got a heck of a lot better. If all those guys that stay, they lost Jack Hughes for a while. Nico Hischier got hurt. Dawson Mercer didn't play like how he was supposed to. Dougie Hamilton missed almost the entire year. Goaltending was the biggest question mark, and now, like you said, you get Jacob Markstrom. Jake Allen is no slouch either. He is pretty good backup goalie, so you got your tandem right now, and as long as all those guys stay healthy, they could really make things interesting where they could fight for the second spot. So optimistically, I still think the Hurricanes are a number 2 team or at least in the top 2 in the Metro, but the Devils could say something different and where the Hurricanes could slip to a 3. Past that, it's a total wild card because, like you said with the Islanders, they could make it or they could fall off just because of the fact they're older. Pittsburgh, I think they did some moves, but I'm not really still sold on what Pittsburgh can do. The Capitals, you go and you get PLD, but that's PLD's 4th team. Like how many seasons now? You bring some guys back, but how? Logan Thompson, what can he do? So
we're gonna find out.
Yeah, I still think they're a top 3 team for sure. I will let them say second, but New Jersey's gonna make it interesting, and then I think it's just what's 4, 5, and 6 gonna say about that. So. Yeah, but expectations, playoffs, where? I guess we'll see. All right, so that is our season expectations, but we are going to do our predictions where we think the Islanders and the Hurricanes are going to finish this upcoming season for the Metro. So stick around here in a second as we talk about that on a Wednesday crossover edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our shows by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 2, we are going to do our predictions for the Islanders and the Hurricanes this year. And Gil, where do you think, we're going to start with your Islanders, of course, where do you, right now on Wednesday, September 11th, where do you predict your New York Islanders to finish in the Metro Division this season?
Yeah, this is tough. I think they are going to finish 4th in the Metro. I'm not going to say in what order, but I think the Devils, the Hurricanes, and the Rangers will be ahead of them in the standings. And then it'll be a close race with the Capitals and the Penguins for 4th, 5th, and 6th. So, could it be better? Yeah, a few things would have to break right. I think health being the biggest one. But it could also, the bottom could also fall out if the wrong players get hurt. You lose Ilya Sorokin for an extended period of time, you're talking about a whole different situation. Yeah. So I think the Islanders will still be right where they've been the last 4 or 5 years. They're either just going to make or just going to miss the playoffs.
No, I definitely agree with that. I know we all saw last year how they got 3rd place just because of the fact that the Flyers all just fell off the cliff, and the Islanders caught them at the right time when they got hot, and that's something that, I said it last year. I'm like, man, don't sleep on the Islanders. Yeah, they might be a quote unquote boring team, which they're really not. It's just they play a different style of hockey, but never count them out though. So yeah, I agree with you. I still think I agree. I don't think we're gonna. I don't have a necessary like who's the top 3 gonna be necessarily, but I think the Islanders are going to get 4th as well. And I do think that I think they get in on a wild card spot. So I do still believe that, yes, they are a year older, but it's still the Islanders, and they always find a way to make the playoffs regardless. I just don't think the Capitals and the Penguins did enough to move the needle to take that 4 spot. They could, like you said, if the bottom falls out, then we're talking a different story. But like if the team stays remotely healthy and just stay ahead of those other 2 teams, I think they're going to be fine to make the playoffs, because the Atlantic, while they are stacked, is going to be also interesting. But I do feel like the Islanders are a 4th team in the Metro while still making the playoffs in somewhat form of a wild card spot. So,
and how about the Hurricanes? Where do you see them finishing, and why?
That's the thing too, because I don't know about the extent to your Islanders, but I think for the Hurricanes it's all depending on, does Anderson stay healthy? Because yes, you have Spencer Martin starting in the AHL. He did pretty good for the 5 games that he did play for the Hurricanes. Pyotr Chekhov played a lot of games last year. I think he played 40. He played 42, started 40, and did really well doing the yeoman's work for the Hurricanes at that point. Defense-wise, and you like I said, you lose your whole second pair, but you still get good guys in, Walker and Gostisbehere. Of course, Gostisbehere is more offensive, but Walker does give you that nice little 2-way with a more defensive side to his game. It's just going to come down to depth scoring for the offense, because you do lose Steph Nason. Likely you bring back Jack Drury. What's William Carrier going to do? What's Jack Roslovic going to do? You've got to hope that Kotkaniemi turns it around, because 27 points for a $4.8 million guy and who lost the second second line center spot in the playoffs. You hopefully you don't see that again. And now it's all right, Martin Necas, you got your pay raise. Go out and be that 65, 70 point guy that we hope you to be. And then you just got to hope that Svechnikov stays healthy all year, and that Aho and Jarvis continue what they did last year, where they absolutely went off and were one of the most lethal lines before and after they got Jake Gensel. So for me, we all know the Hurricanes are going to make the playoffs. I do have them finishing. I have them finishing second, but it's going to be a very close where I could see them at the worst finishing third, just because maybe if New Jersey stays healthy and their situation all works out. I don't think the Hurricanes are going to hit a wild card spot unless like for you guys, the bottom completely falls out and they just struggle with scoring or goaltending health and stuff like that. So I would say at the worst third, but I still feel optimistic for a second spot for the Hurricanes. How do you feel about Carolina coming into the season?
I'm with you. I think they will take a step back, 3 points away from the President's Trophy. I don't think they're still there right now. But I also think that the Devils are going to take a little time to gel. They've got a lot of new pieces coming in. I think Carolina will edge out New Jersey for that second place spot in the Metro. But it may go down to like the last game or two. And, I think New Jersey will be kind of on their heels as the season winds down and they start playing better hockey.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah, it's as of right now, it's the one spot. It looks like it might be running it back again. Of course, we don't know how far ahead there might be running it back. It could be a different team winning the Presidents, but yeah, I think that second, third spot, it's going to be what we saw for the President's Trophy, where it came down to like 2 games left and the Rangers just got it by. They won out their games. But yeah, with the Hurricanes and Devils, I could definitely see it being a 2-3 games left in the year. All right, if this team wins, it's done. If this team loses, it's done, or however the scenarios play out. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's just one of those things where, all right, you got to hope that you have enough points by the end of the season and you kind of clinch it with a couple games left and just be on your merry way. Because either way, you're going to face each other. It's just who gets home ice advantage first at that point. It's all it really comes down to. So,
and I got to say, it would be nice from an Islanders perspective to face a different team in the playoffs this year if we get there.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I know we've beaten you guys the last couple times, which I'm like, it's nice, but I'm also like, can I see someone else, please? Like, I don't mind playing you guys, but like, can we have like a different dance partner for at least the first round?
It'd be more entertaining. I agree.
You know what, though? Nino Niederreiter and Sebastian Aho both said it would be nice to go back to the 1-8, and I don't blame them because that actually was more organic. It actually made it more interesting instead of, let's just force rivalries in the playoffs. And you're kind of like, okay, cool. It's the same matchups every year, and it's all right. So, yeah, it'll definitely be nice to face a different dance partner for sure. I know for you guys, it'll be interesting either be the Rangers or whoever's the other coming out of the Atlantic. So either way, you guys should have a fun time for sure for that first, or at least you won't be seeing us hopefully this time, but we'll see. We'll see. But that will wrap up this episode. Thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On AHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On AHL in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to go check out the Monday and the Friday editions, most definitely, because Mr. Gil Martin is the host/co-host of those 2 days. So if you need to kind of start your week and end your week, definitely recommend Mondays and Fridays at least. But Gil, thank you so much for doing this crossover. It's always fun talking to you about hockey. So where can people find you and your podcast in case they want to keep up with the Islanders, just to get your perspective on your team?
Well, Locked On Islanders, wherever you get podcasts, wherever you get Locked On Hurricanes, you'll find Locked On Islanders, YouTube, all the usual podcast audio broadcasters. You can follow the podcast on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me on X at Ice Wars NYR VSNYI.
Awesome. And you can follow me at One True Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. Like Gil said, you can find the podcast on all podcast platforms at Locked On Hurricanes. I do have a link tree in my personal bio where you can check out my articles at the Hockey Writers, Hurricanes, Chicago Wolves, all that good stuff. You can also check out links to my other podcasts, the Searchcast, if you want to check that out. For this podcast, there is a link to where you can listen on all podcast platforms. Leave a 5-star review, because if you do, I might just read on the show. For the YouTube side of things, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Leave the thumbs up button to let me know if you like the show. In the comments section, where do you predict the Islanders and the Hurricanes to finish in the Metro? If you want to do the full 8, go for it. But if not, at least just tell me where you think the Islanders and the Hurricanes are going to be for the Metro Division this year. Make sure to share this podcast with other Hurricanes fans, because we are over 950 subscribers. We are on the road to 1,000. And if we get to 1,000, I might do something special for you guys. But I hope everyone enjoyed this Wednesday edition of the crossover of Locked On Hurricanes and Locked On Islanders. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.